Lisa McCauley Parles, the parent of a 26-year-old with autism and a partner at the law firm Parles Rechem, which provides legal representation to children and adults with special needs and their families.
So now I want to pass to Lisa Parles, who also has a great son and her journey. This is our first presentation, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my family story and also to talk about the critical needs of individuals with autism who are nonverbal and exhibit challenging and sometimes dangerous behaviors. My son Andrew, who's 26, is nonverbal, and he does have challenging behaviors. There are many, many Andrews out there, but their stories are not being told too often. Countless families struggle for access to effective services, and while they're waiting, they suffer in unimaginable solitude, while their loved ones may engage in self-injury, pica, aggression, or elopement. In my law practice, I've met families whose loved ones have ingested batteries, jumped from moving cars, eaten surgical dressings, even extracted their own teeth. One client's child at 16 began to smash light bulbs, and if it wasn't watched for every second, would eat the pieces. You can only imagine the stress that family and that person with autism lived in. Now, turning back to Andrew, when he was diagnosed in '93, since he was diagnosed, he's received services in 4 states, and our family's moved 8 times. We were fortunate he got a spot in a coveted ABA home-based program, and he really blossomed. He began to speak single words, his receptive language really strengthened, and he even spent some time in a typical preschool. After a few years of realizing that we were going to have needs beyond the preschool moves, we moved again in order to attend a specialized school. In the 13 years in that school, he blossomed. His language did remain limited, and he needed help to painstakingly be taught skills step by step. But he did learn to ride his bike, tie his shoes, use a microwave, and even play Uno with his brother. However, at 19, he suffered a regression that so many individuals with autism do, particularly in their teenage years and as adults. His regression, I can only describe as an assault on his brain, both biologically and neurologically. He lost his language, he didn't sleep, he didn't eat, he lost 100 pounds in 3 months, and tragically, he began to engage in self-injurious behavior, hitting the sides of his head and his ears. We adjusted our goals and our dreams, but not our drive to get him what he needed. We had resources to have staff around the clock, but we couldn't find people. I could recognize the fear on people's face when Andrew hurt himself, and we were left alone. My other son often slept in a hotel with his grandparents or at friends. So we had to search for a residential program. We fought for funding. I pleaded with admissions directors, and we finally found it. 1 year after his crisis, he went to a campus-based behavioral medical program in another state. We were relieved, but we were also heartbroken. He would be 1,500 miles away for 15 months. Once his sleep improved, we were able to come back to New Jersey, and he began to gain skills again, but never returned to the earlier state. Then 2 years ago, we discovered that he had traumatic cataracts and it detached the retinas in both his eyes. The surgeons believed that the injuries were from long ago. Since he lost his language, he used his iPad to communicate, so his sight was his voice. And he wasn't able to, because of his limited language, tell us that he was losing his vision. Fortunately, we did get through 3 surgeries, and his sight's restored. More importantly, we got through almost an impossible post-surgical recovery period where not only couldn't he hit his head, he couldn't touch his eyes, which at the time felt like there was a foreign body because there were stitches. Now, since his sight was restored, on good days, he volunteers at a food bank. We're very proud of the work he does in a community-based group home. and on Fridays when he delivers groceries to low-income seniors. But on days when he hasn't slept, or when he's agitated or uncomfortable or distressed, and it's actually unsafe for him to go to the community, he gets to stay productive in a campus-based greenhouse and in the calming, tranquil sensory room. But with intensive supports, he is getting his hair cut, going to the dentist, shopping, and going to restaurants and concerts. Researchers have studied the families that are unable to access quality of services and found that the families experience isolation, exhaustion, safety concerns, and actually the real fear of injury and death. Autism is a spectrum disorder. We have to remember it's a spectrum disorder for where you are on the spectrum and even within the spectrum, because you can have different points in your life where your needs change. Those on the end of the spectrum where Andrew sits, while facing incredible challenges, deserve specialized individual support in order to pursue all the goals that were identified today in the discussions. But I urge us to meet an additional valued and critical goal, and that's safety, and more descriptively, the reduction of suffering. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Now we're going to have testimonial like this. We all have stories to share. Lisa, I know we're running out of time. And if you can be briefly but very precise in two important topics, which is safety and housing or a community for those for a road into independence living.
Right, thank you. Well, I think there's two topics that sort of related. One is the issue of when guardianship is appropriate, and the other is who gets to make choices when you're choosing among a variety of settings. My son Andrew is not a failure because I'm his guardian. And I know that no one intends to make parents feel that way, but I think I have to caution researchers and others in the field, and even other parents, that sometimes parents are made to feel that way. I wish and pray every day I didn't have to make decisions for Andrew. They're extremely complex. Do we do one surgery with a worse outcome, or do we do 3 with a better? And it's not just cases like that. It's every day for families with autism that I just had a client last week. His child had a cavity. What should they do? Put him under anesthesia and get it done quickly, subject him to the risk of anesthesia, or work on, but maybe the cavity gets worse, sitting in the dentist chair. But on the other hand, if you do anesthesia, they have to not eat for 8 hours, and he could engage in self-injury. Those are the complex decisions that families have to make, and their heart breaks every time they make them. So I just share that with those of you in the field. In addition to that, no one wants anyone with autism to have a life with coercion. We all want to be guided by choices. And the most important of choice is that, well, we can't have independence or self-direction without a variety of services. And we have to make it available because we desperately need all sorts of options, perhaps an apartment where you live on your own, but maybe a campus or a farmstead. And we need these for safety reasons for a number of individuals. I had a client whose son lived in the community after leaving a campus and ran out of the house and was killed by a car. If he had had the buffer, he would probably be with us today. Not here in this room, though, because we're not at a point yet where we're all accommodating enough for some people to attend. But in speaking for those who can't, I think the most important thing for autonomy is that there's choices and an array, and we support each other.
This will conclude our presentation to A Road to Independence. In my name as a Latina mother of 2 boys on the spectrum and also newscaster for the biggest news television, Telemundo, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jojo. Thank you, Zemi. Thank you, Janet, Sophia, Lisa, Daniel, and Desiree, for sharing those stories with us. And I think, as Professor Baron Cohen asked us this morning to stand in memory of the autistic people who have killed themselves, I think we should probably stand and give a hand of applause to families who are supporting people with autism. You are there on the front line facing it and supporting before the society comes around to provide that support, before the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. It's where the family is I think, most important.